Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving deep into one of the most essential and, let's be honest, seemingly magical human traits, creativity. We're going to explore the science behind that aha moment, using some amazing insights from both neuroscientists and artists.
So let's start with the big question, right? What is the anatomy of an aha moment? It's something that scientists, artists, you name it, they've been obsessed with this for centuries. We're going to be digging into it through a really fascinating report from the National Endowment for the Arts and the Santa Fe Institute, where they brought together some of the top minds to map what is literally happening in our brains during a flash of insight.
And this quote from researcher Mark Runco just nails it. The point is, creativity isn't some rare gift for a lucky few. No, it's a fundamental part of our human wiring that, we can all learn to tap into.
Okay, so where does that creative spark actually come from? I want you to picture a freestyle rapper, just dropping these complex rhymes completely on the spot, or a jazz musician who's just lost in an incredible improvisation.
What is going on in there? Well, a neuroscientist named Charles Lim wanted to find out. He literally put these musicians inside fMRI machines to watch their brains in action. And what he found is kind of wild. Creativity isn't just about turning parts of the brain on, it's also, surprisingly, about turning other parts off. So it turns out this whole magic of creativity, well, it can actually be broken down. Researchers have figured out there are 4 key cognitive ingredients that have to come together to make a creative breakthrough happen.
First up is what's called working memory. The best way to think about this is like your own personal mental workbench. It's where you pull out all the facts, the experiences, the skills you've gathered over your entire life. See, creativity really depends on being able to grab all these different parts and mash them together in new and totally unexpected ways.
Next on the list is divergent thinking. Now, this is your brain in full-on brainstorming mode. It's about casting the widest net you possibly can, just generating a ton of ideas without stopping to judge any of them. The goal here is just pure exploration, pure possibility.
But 1,000 ideas aren't very useful without the third ingredient, convergent thinking. After you've thrown that super wide net, this is the process of using logic and strategy to sort through everything you caught, find that single best solution, and then polish it up.
And finally, there's flow. This idea, pioneered by the psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, is that feeling of being completely in the zone. You know what I'm talking about. It's when you're so absorbed in what you're doing that time just seems to melt away, and your creative output just soars.
So you see, the real magic happens in the dance between these two modes of thinking. True creativity needs both, the wild idea generation of divergent thinking and the laser-focused selection of convergent thinking. Researchers actually call this the magic synthesis, this beautiful dance between casting that wide net and then finding the treasure inside it.
So we've covered the ingredients, but what does all this actually look like inside our brains? In the actual circuitry? Well, our brain is constantly running this feedback loop called the perception-action cycle. Get this, about 3 times every single second, it's taking in new information, evaluating it, and planning what to do next. This creates these really well-worn mental paths, or habits. Creativity happens when something comes along and disrupts those habits, forcing the brain to build brand new connections between ideas.
Which brings us right back to our jazz musician. How do they break out of playing the same old stuff and create something totally new right there in the moment? The answer is pretty fascinating. It's not just about what their brain turns on, but also what it decides to shut down. And there's a name for this phenomenon, hypofrontality. During that intense creative flow, fMRI scans show that the prefrontal cortex, that's the part of your brain that acts like your inner critic, the one that handles self-monitoring and doubt, it just quiets right down. That nagging little voice that says, hey, is this good enough? It goes completely offline, which allows ideas to just flow without any filter.
So this is all really cool, but it's not just some lab experiment. This research has huge implications for how we learn, how we work, and honestly how we solve problems in our everyday lives.
And there's a real urgency here. Studies have found something pretty worrying called the 4th grade slump in creativity. As school starts to focus more and more on standardized testing and finding the one right answer, that's convergent thinking, our capacity for that wide-open, divergent, creative thinking can just plummet.
But there is good news, and a really clear strategy to fight this slump. Major studies from places like the Kennedy Center show that arts-integrated learning is an incredibly powerful solution. When we use creative methods to teach the traditional subjects, students show huge gains in confidence, in participation, and in that all-important skill of persistence, or what people call grit.
And this is just brilliantly illustrated by a Johns Hopkins study. It found that when science was taught using artsy methods like dance and drawing, students who had lower reading skills actually retained more of the science content in the long run than their peers in traditional classrooms. I mean, how incredible is that?
So where does all this research leave us? What's the big takeaway from peeking inside the creative brain?
Well, it's this. Creativity is not some mystical, unknowable force. It's a biological process. And by understanding its core components, our working memory, that dance between divergent and convergent thinking, and the power of flow, we can all get better at nurturing it in ourselves, in our schools, and in our workplaces.
The ultimate goal here, as neuroscientist Charles Lim puts it, is to move beyond just understanding it. The real hope is that we can eventually develop targeted therapies, technologies, and new educational strategies that can actively strengthen these creative circuits inside our brains.
And that leaves us with a final, really provocative thought. We are standing right at the edge of a new frontier. By continuing to map the neurobiology of imagination, we might just be able to systematically unlock one of the most powerful and defining features of our species, for everyone.